The following is an original production of AZPM News.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, find out if national monuments here are in danger of cuts from the Trump administration, similar to those that were recently made in Utah. Meet Alyssa Namias, the director of the new documentary called Cookie Queens. Learn about the internet subculture of ASMR, where some people find sounds become sensation. And an improbable story of survival against the odds, and also about stories that can be too painful to share, even with those we love. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. Our first story comes to us from KJZZ Public Radio in Phoenix. KJZZ's coverage of tribal natural resources is supported in part by Katina Foundation. National monuments are significant lands and waters set aside for protection by the federal government. These sites are cherished by many, from hunters and anglers to tourists and tribal members. But they're also political battlegrounds, especially in neighboring Utah. President Trump recently made a pair of proclamations to dramatically downsize two national monuments there. As KJZZ's Gabriel Pietrorazio reports, the president set a new record for the largest wholesale rollback of protections for public lands in U.S. history.
Back in October, I flew over Bears Ears National Monument with the nonprofit EcoFlight. Our cramped six-seater propeller plane had a bumpy takeoff from Blanding, a small town in southern Utah that butts up against this sprawling landscape.
So all of this expanse that we can see, pretty much everything that's in the darkness, and even some in the light, is all a part of Bears Ears National Monument.
Tim Peterson with the nonprofit Grand Canyon Trust was our guide. We soared the windy skies for maybe half an hour, chit-chatting through static headsets about whether President Trump would shrink the footprint of Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante, reversing a Biden-era restoration of those monuments.
There have been several fire drills so far this year where it's rumored they're going to do it and then they didn't do it. So at this point, the president can't even find the time to nominate a permanent director for the Bureau of Land Management. So I'm sort of hoping that they'll just kind of forget about it.
We can now report Trump didn't forget.
Let's sign. This is very nice. I'm very happy about this. And better than the first time.
Citing the very Antiquities Act that former President Joe Biden used, Trump once more slashed the size of Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante by 90%.
Almost 3 million acres. Going to be well taken care of now.
Also at the White House was Utah Republican Governor Spencer Cox.
As I explained to President Biden, that's two Delawares. It's been abused, and so it was done by executive action. President Trump is right-sizing it to bring it in compliance with what the law says.
Utah Republican U.S. Senator Mike Lee was there too.
President Biden, President Clinton, and President Obama overlooked that standard. President Trump is fixing it today.
Now those once federally protected swaths are basically wide open to BLM Director Steve Pearce. Arizona Democratic U.S. Senator Ruben Gallego fears they'll be sold or auctioned off to the highest bidder.
It's been sought after by uranium mines or just in general people trying to buy beautiful land to make it to private estates. And most likely they're going to rush to try to sell this as fast as possible because they know that the American public is against getting rid of our public lands.
Meanwhile, tribal leaders like Navajo Davina Smithy Jeza are tired of this partisan tug of war.
Because Bears Ears is at my back door. This is not a political talking point for me. This is home.
She co-chairs the Bears Ears Intertribal Coalition.
Today, I am speaking from a broken heart. I am angry, I am hurt, and I am tired of standing here having to explain again why Bears Ears matters to me. We have been here before, but this cuts even deeper.
Because unlike last time, this proclamation not only reduces Bears Ears from nearly 1.4 million acres to about 121,000, but it also terminates the Obama-era Oversight Commission. The order even goes so far to say the feds have no obligation to engage, consult, or coordinate. Similarly, Grand Staircase Escalante has shrunk from about 1.9 million acres to roughly 182,000.
While administrations may change, our responsibility to these lands does not. We care for the land because the land has always cared for us.
Autumn Gillard is Southern Paiute and coordinator for the Grand Staircase Intertribal Coalition. The tribal groups claim the Trump administration never consulted them beforehand.
We kept hearing this narrative that local stakeholders were not heard. But what about our tribal voices? Are their voices not equal to those of other citizens that live in the state?
Despite Trump abolishing the commission and redrawing the boundary, Smith Ijeza stresses
Our connection to Bears Ears did not begin with a presidential proclamation, and it will not end with one.
For KJZZ News, I'm Gabriel Pietrorazio, reporting from Bears Ears.
Thanks to KJZZ for supplying that story. Each year in America, during a 6-week sweet tooth binge, as many as 200 million boxes of Girl Scout cookies are sold. That counts for about $800 million of revenue, all through the dedication and hard work of the Scouts and their supporters. A new documentary focused on 4 Scouts and their hopes and dreams for the future. It opens in theaters across the country next weekend, and it's called Cookie Queens. I spoke to the director, who has a direct connection to Southern Arizona.
My name is Alyssa Namias, and I'm a filmmaker. I directed a new film called Cookie Queens that's in theaters August 7th, and I was born and raised in Tucson, Arizona. Childhood in Tucson was magical in a lot of ways. Growing up in the desert, I feel like there's such sublime beauty and also a lot of kind of intensity and sometimes even harshness. That landscape is just really important to me, I think, into my formative years, and also the diversity of Tucson at the time when I was there in the 80s and 90s with the university, with the Air Force Base, with snowbirds coming in and out. It was just a place where I played soccer with a lot of different kids from different backgrounds. It was girls from all over the city. And that was sort of I didn't do Girl Scouts. This film is, about top sellers of Girl Scout cookies. I was not a Girl Scout, but soccer was my space of sisterhood in Tucson. And we would travel sometimes to San Diego or all the time to Phoenix to play other teams. And it's just really meaningful to me to grow up in that kind of environment and really be like bilingual too, and culturally bilingual in a lot of ways.
How many documentaries have you completed, Elisa?
Cookie Queens is my 4th feature documentary as a director, and as a producer, I've done many more.
Tell me something about the logistics of planning this film, because Girl Scout season must be a manic time. You've only got 6 weeks to cover everything you wanted to get covered.
Production was really amazing on this film. It was a feat. My producer, Jen Sims, who was in the field with me the whole time, did an excellent job coordinating between the different places we filmed. We actually filmed in 7 places to get the 4 that are featured in the film. And it was all the same crew, 5 of us traveled everywhere. And so I knew we would miss certain things in certain places, but it was worth it so that we could have a consistent aesthetic across the film, and both visually and also in terms of the meaning making that I wanted to do with tying the stories together and finding points of connection and dialogue between the different girls of different ages and different backgrounds and geographies. And one of the tricks that we found was that, while Girl Scout cookie season is about 6 weeks nationwide, those 6 weeks are a bit up to each regional council to determine. And so we did find regions where the start of the season was slightly different and staggered so that we could be there at the beginning and when the cookies came and at the end across the different cities where we filmed. And so that was part of the casting process, was thinking about casting that schedule. And it was a little bit like a sports movie where we filmed, preseason, season, and postseason. And the good part about that as a documentary filmmaker is you're going to get a really great story in a pretty short amount of time, as opposed to other projects I've done that have gone on years where you're trying to figure out, when does this end?
Well, according to Olive, it never ends. There's never a stopping point.
It's true sometimes for these kids.
What you said about the arc of the story reminded me, I read a lot of biographies and musical biographies, and there's always the high expectations and the high hopes at the beginning, the scrappy start, then if you're lucky, the salad days of everything working out, then the burnout, the decline, and finally the reflection on the experience.
That means a lot to me that you saw that in the film. I think you're right. Obviously, it's not about music and it's not about sports, but it is something that for me is a more universal story where it's about the cookies, but it's also not at all about the cookies. It's really about the experiences, the inner journeys of these kids who are super passionate about something, and what it means to come of age in America today. The some of the pain points and pressures, as well as some of the joys, and looking at sort of how much we have in common, even though we also have at this moment in our country a lot that seems to divide us. And I wanted to take a look at that and find a more universal language, and looking at childhood, taking girls seriously. And I think, these kids are both little adults sometimes, as you saw from the film. They say things that are wise beyond their years and do things that are incredibly brilliant at times and insightful. And then also they're just kids too. And I wanted girls especially to be able to exist as both of those things, because, as a mom myself, I've seen with my daughter and also my son that in those tween years, especially, kids are often pressured to be like, more grown up, or they're just still kids. And I think those years are years when we actually can learn a lot from kids that age. The questions they ask are really good questions if we pay attention.
I have to tell you, Alyssa, that the character that I enjoyed watching the most was Ara, who's only 5 years old. And she's living with diabetes, and she's got a positive attitude, and she's learning piano and setting very attainable goals for herself throughout the thing. It's a great maturity that she shows at just the age of 5.
I'm so glad you enjoyed Ara. She is a gem, as are all the girls in the film. And yeah, that 5-year-old innocence was something I wanted to highlight, because I think in Ara, part of why I enjoy watching her story on screen is that I can see the older girls in the film reflected in her. I can imagine how they might have been when they were 5 years old. And how Ara might be when she gets to be a tween or a teen, and sort of understand the preciousness of each of those phases of childhood, the fleeting moments when we actually want to be older,
Yeah.
and those moments when we have experience our first rejection, or our first triumph at something. And she really embodies that, and she's so precocious.
Do you know how many theaters you're opening in on August 7th?
Yes, we are opening nationwide in the US and in some parts of Canada on August 7th in about 500 theaters. So folks can go to cookiequeensfilm.com and click get tickets, and it's searchable by zip code. It should be in a theater near you. And we're super excited. We're also on Instagram at Cookie Queens Film if people want to tag us so we can repost. And I hope everyone gets to have some summer air conditioning there in Arizona by watching Cookie Queens.
We won't tell if you want to sneak in some cookies.
Definitely not.
My guest was Alyssa Namias, the director of Cookie Queens. You can watch the trailer on the Spotlight page at azpm.org. There's a surprisingly large community online that seeks out a certain kind of nerve stimulation, one that makes some people squirm, but others find soothing and comforting. Here's one of the most successful artists in the movement called ASMR to explain the basics.
My name is Julieta ASMR, and today I'm going to be doing some tests to see if you might have ADHD, okay? I have ADHD myself, and it is very difficult to focus sometimes. When I was a little girl, and my mom used to sing me a lullaby every night. And that was the first time that I felt like so relaxed that I would just fall asleep. Anything related to optometry, to me, always gave me like the biggest ASMR feeling and relaxed and getting like the, which one is better, one or two? And now read the letter, I would always tell doctors like, I'm falling asleep. ASMR stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, which is just a fancy way to say that feeling you get, like you're getting a scalp massage and you feel it all around like a ants going on your head. That is ASMR. It's a little tingly feeling. A lot of people experience it. They don't know what it is. Sometimes it can make you sleepy. Because when you have ADHD, you have so much in your mind all the time. And sometimes focusing on one little thing can do wonders for a busy mind. The ASMR that I make and the one that I made today is made for people who are neurodivergent. I have ADHD and other ones. And I think that the type of ADHD doctor videos that I do helps people to really be in the moment and focus and get your attention and calm your mind and just, get kind of like tunnel vision with everything going on. How many times do I move the swivel? Okay, let's count. 1, 2, 3. So now you're going to count on your own, okay? Some of my most popular videos are the ADHD doctor videos, so that's the one that I decided to do today. But I do many other characters that are pretty bad. I do a rat character. And I have one of my favorite things here. It is cheese. I do abuelita character for my Spanish speakers. Me encanta, así como azulito, te vas a ver muy bonito con tu color de piel. Se va a ver perfecto. ASMR is a very accessible way for people to find ways to relax and feel safe and feel connected and find sleep aids in a way that it doesn't involve medication. It doesn't involve doctors. You don't have to have health insurance to look at ASMR. All you need is your phone. I think for a lot of people who are struggling right now, either financially or with mental health, ASMR is an easy way to find exactly what you're looking for. There's worlds of videos that can help people relax and fall asleep that are free. So, well, with the occasional ad, but don't worry about that. Just ignore those. Do you see this buff over here? Okay, good. I'm gonna need you to follow it side to side. I've been doing ASMR for 7 years now, professionally. Is the brown one close or far? Okay, good. Is the brown one close or far? I've always been an ASMR consumer. So when I started watching ASMR every night, I noticed that there were not a lot of out LGBTQIA ASMR artists. And I'm part of the community. So I was like, maybe there is a space for me to do very intentional LGBTQIA ASMR videos. Hope you've been enjoying ASMR week so far. Today, I thought I would make it a little bit more serious and share with you a little bit of my coming out story. I'm here for you and that you are valid the way you are. ASMR doesn't have an age. Like, I'm in my 40s and I make ASMR, I can be making content for my 18 to 24 demographic, but there are viewers of mine that are in their 70s and their 80s. Here is a bright light and I'm going to need you to follow it from left to right. There's no orientation or ability level. You are welcome in the ASMR community. You just have to find your person. I'm one of thousands, and there's, everything and anything you can think about. Now ignore the light and just look at my nose. Love seeing that. Love seeing how the community has grown and evolved and now looks very different. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for listening to me. And hopefully you enjoy these little noises.
That story was produced by Diana Cardena for the television show Arizona Illustrated on PBS 6. It will air later this year. I first met Bodan Zachary in 2025, when after a long career in public broadcasting, he came to Tucson to be the Chief Original Content Officer at AZPM. Earlier this month, he asked me to read an essay he had written and see if I thought it would fit on Spotlight.
My mother was 12 years old the first time she cheated death. A munitions factory outside a Nazi labor camp. No gloves, no mask, unrelenting work days. Girls her age breathing whatever circulated in the air that day and hoping it wasn't the day that killed them. She didn't talk about it often. When she did, she talked about it the way you'd mention inclement weather from a long time ago. That was the first time. The second time was tuberculosis. In a sanatorium in Montreal, doctors telling her parents to prepare themselves. After the war ended, 2 Ukrainian teenagers met in a high school in Bayreuth, Germany. They were both in a displaced persons camp, housing thousands of refugees who were essentially without a place to live. Behind their recent past was the sound, my mother said just once and never again, of families being separated on a dock. Soldiers deciding who stayed in the DP camps, who went back to the Russians. Many killed themselves on the train rides to avoid the brutality of what would face them in Siberia. The news that the inhabitants of Mom's camp were about to be handed over to the Russians spread quickly. Fortunately, the one camp resident who spoke halting English pleaded with the American soldiers in charge of the camp to save them. After considering his request, the Americans allowed the camp dwellers to migrate to other countries once they found sponsors. In Olga's case, a refugee agency became their sponsor, and Mom's family would go to Canada. Days before the boat sail, she broke out in a rash head to toe, bad enough to threaten her passage, until a sympathetic camp doctor secretly slathered her with ointment. The Silvestric family, Olga, Zanya, Stefan, and Sophia, landed in Montreal penniless and without a word of English. Volodymyr Zachary emigrated to New York, sponsored by distant relatives. Then Olga's health took a dramatic turn. Tuberculosis, in a Montreal monastery converted into the city's main TB ward. Her closest friends from the camp stopped writing her, afraid the letters themselves might carry it back. Word reached Volodymyr about Olga's condition. He began to send her letters and inserted cartoons cut out of the newspaper, hoping they would bring her a smile. Then he began taking the Greyhound bus, Friday night, 14 hours each way. He'd arrive Saturday, sit with her through what daylight there was, and be back on a bus by Sunday morning so he could clock in Monday at work like none of it had happened. Her parents asked him to stop, not because they didn't like him, because they didn't think she had long enough left for it to matter. He came anyway. The weekend she was closest to gone, he proposed. Her parents were furious. A dying girl doesn't need a promise she won't get to keep, they told him. He asked anyway. She said yes. Within days, she was in remission. The doctors called it a miracle. Then, almost in the same breath, told her she'd never carry a child. Something about the chemicals from the plant and the TB that had racked her body. They said this to a woman who'd already come back from the dead. Olga and Volodymyr married in Montreal. A year later, Detroit welcomed them, the way it took in half of displaced Europe. The auto plants needed workers and didn't ask many questions. And a year after the wedding, the woman who was never supposed to carry a child was pregnant. This time, the new doctors gave her terrible news. They said she needed to terminate the pregnancy because she would either lose the child during birth, die herself, or both would not make it. On July 24, 1956, in the delivery room at St. Francis Hospital in Hamtramck, Michigan, they named me Bogdan, which means God-given in Ukrainian. I think about that a lot now that they're both gone, how close I came to not existing at all. I have pieces of who they were and the stories of the unrelenting nightmares they survived. That's what I have. My brother and sister told me about a trip Mom and Dad made to Germany in the late 1980s to revisit their wartime past. Late one night, my parents were driven to the remnants of the barracks where Olga had lived under the Nazis. 40 years gone, and Olga walked straight to the exact spot. She said she could never forget what was. A soldier had once put a gun to my grandmother's head for being too sick to work. Olga ran at him screaming until he lowered it. I wasn't able to join the family in Germany because I was in New York working in a newsroom. I heard details about the event secondhand from my siblings. It wasn't enough. So I started making the trips home with a recorder in my bag, not for my siblings' version, but my mother's. My intent was to know what facing near death in that sanatorium had actually felt like, and what it was like to stand in the former Nazi barracks after 40 years and relive the ghosts of the past. I set the recorder on the kitchen table between us, a few feet from the knick-knack cabinet that featured my Emmy Award statuettes Mom proudly showed off to every visitor at her modest home. I tell her I wanted every detail, even the ones that hurt, because the world should know what she survived. I'd press record. I'd ask the first question, and she would go quiet, eyes glazing over, drifting somewhere past me, somewhere back in Bayreuth or the plant or the dock or that gate in Germany, and then she'd lift her eyes to mine, slowly, like it cost her something, and say, "Not today." Every visit, every year, not today. I kept bringing the recorder. I kept asking on each visit. She kept going quiet, giving me the same 2 words, and I told myself there would be another visit, another year, another chance at today. Then she was gone, and today never came. I don't have her voice on tape saying what the munitions plant and the raw chemicals she handled did to a 12-year-old girl. I don't have the words for what she experienced in that moment when they were all about to be sent back to certain deaths in Russia. I have what she gave me in fragments over decades, recounted after family dinners at our kitchen table, unrecorded, when she was ready and not when I was. That's what I have. It's enough. It has to be. I turned 70 this month. It's the kind of birthday you want to celebrate with your parents, and I can't. And that's its own kind of not today. For Arizona Spotlight, I'm Bogdan Zachary, or Bodan Zachary in English.
Thank you for listening to Arizona Spotlight. This show is a production of AZPM and is posted weekly at azpm.org. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
This has been an original production of AZPM News.